We're going to talk about who I am, what Bluestem is, for those few of you who have never heard of us. We're going to talk about sharks. We're going to talk about nulls. We're going to get into problems we solved. We're going to talk about search conversion, what we've done lately, what we might do next, and generally speaking, explore the journey my company and I have had, partnering with Lucidworks, deploying new search technology, and basically taking advantage of the tools and the techniques and the capabilities that the community that we're all learning about here together at Lucene Revolution has built. So first of all, who are we? Bluestem Brands Incorporated. Bluestem Brands Incorporated has been around in some form or another since 1948. Humble automotive owner, sales eventually turned into direct mail, eventually turned into catalogs. There have been mergers, there have been acquisitions, there have been reclassifications. Over the course of the last 70-ish years, essentially, we have grown up to be a multi-brand, general merchandise, e-commerce and catalog company. I like to say we're a company with catalog roots and an e-commerce focus. We have something like 16 brands that we service customers through, some of the largest of which are Fingerhut, Blair, Drapers and Damons, Appleseeds. There's a whole slide describing more of them. Generally speaking, my brands are broken up into kind of two types. I have on one side what I refer to as the North Star portfolio. This is a collection of brands that are really focused on servicing the subprime credit market. In the context of search and search technology, where this is particularly interesting is that the customers who are engaging with these brands are generally speaking not guest checkout customers. When somebody is shopping on these sites with me, I know who this person is. They've applied for a credit account. I have information about their credit limit. I have their purchasing history. I know things about these customers that a lot of e-commerce sites don't have to know. On the other side of my portfolio set, I have my Orchard brands. These are more traditional apparel and home goods focused brands. These are more traditional guest checkout things. Also generally heavier weighted to catalog, heavier weighted to sort of senior citizens and their sorts of needs. But generally speaking, the whole gamut of merchandise is sold through some of my brands. Electronics, furniture, clothing, automotive repair, tires, toys, everything that you can imagine. We are headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have 13 locations spread across 7 states. There's probably 3,000 or so employees total, maybe peaking at 7,000 employees during peak holiday season, but generally speaking, we are everywhere from Massachusetts to California. So, e-commerce retailer. Now, who am I inside of Bluestem Brands? Well, I'm Jake Wagner. My title is IT Director, and I'm in charge of what we call the product pipeline. The product pipeline is the discipline for us of working with our buyers and our merchandisers to understand what merchandise we're trying to bring and make available in the catalog's website, taking that through various decoration and extension systems where we get the right pictures of the products and write descriptive web copy about it and set it up in the financial systems and otherwise make it available in a format that is attractive to our customers. And then ultimately expressing it to our customers in our search engine, which is really where my solar passion comes from. So, what was the problem set that got us engaged in the deep technological community that we're all a part of here? Well, it starts back for my Fingerhut brand in about 2015. Now in 2015, if you were to look at fingerhut.com, you would see a very targeted assortment, looking at a very particular customer segment. We had something like 70,000 SKUs, maybe 30,000 products, just an adorable little product index, right? This tiny little thing. And we had no major problems inside of it. There were some realities of having a tiny index that you kind of have to deal with. One of them is that for any given search term, you might legitimately not have a hit in your product index. There's just not that many documents inside of it. And so there were some search tuning decisions that we made as a function of our tiny assortment. One of them, for instance, is that if you have a lot of terms in your query, we would sort of, if any of those terms were applicable to a document, we would return that document, right? Any number of words, we just OR them together and you would have something nice. We had largely an architecture that looks like this. For those of you who care deeply about architecture, it's slightly more complicated than these boxes and arrows, but to sort of sum it up, I have a family of microservices that live around my solar implementation. One of them in the middle of the slide is called the search service. The search service is a confluence of Governor, which is a Drools-based rules engine. My business comes into Governor, and they create a bunch of business rules, configuration, things that they want to accomplish. Things like mappings of categories and setting up what we call a keyword shop. Keyword shop is a curated response result set that you want to return when a magic word is fed in. Imagine like Valentine's Day sale 2017. What are the products you want to be a part of the sale? They would sort of set that up with a curated and intentionally ordered list, all through Governor. And as I mentioned, we did this OR-based searching inside of this. Now, it was not totally painless, right? It worked for years. I can't complain about it. But what did often happen, for instance, was interacting with Governor was very painful. The way that my business, we used the universal UI of Microsoft Excel to collect business rules. We would feed them into some transformation jobs. They would ultimately be loaded into Drools syntax, and we'd sort of drop rules collections and reload them. And it was delicate and expensive, and we had some problems. But we made money with it for years and years. Nobody can complain. So what changed? Well, what changed happened in 2016. Now, in 2016, we launched something that we called the Assortment Expansion Project, right? Assortment Expansion for us was a company-wide initiative to go from 70,000 SKUs to 1 million SKUs, right? So that is a not insubstantial change in what your solar document collections look like. We went from 30,000 products to more than 500,000 products, and we did it within a year. Now, this was transformational, both technologically and organizationally for my company. The way we onboarded products, the way the teams were organized, everything changed in order to deal with the massive influx of data and getting it into solar in the appropriate ways. Now, what happened was many of the assumptions, many of the rules that we created that made a ton of sense with 30,000 products, all of a sudden were very, very painful with 500,000 products. And to give you an example, if you were to go to fingerhut.com in 2015, early 2016, and search for sofa, just a nice search for sofa, what you would get is kind of this little call out right here. You would get 300 some odd sofas back, not terrible. If you were to do post-assortment expansion, if you were to do a more focused search, if you were to look instead for blue sofas, you would get this search result back. And you can see here that blue sofas now returns 23,700 some odd search results. Some of you have seen this before. It is a ridiculous number of sofas as far as I'm concerned. The worst part about this, though, is that there's a lot of power of solar in the search engine that we just totally lost the ability to pay attention to, right? When you return 23,000 sofas, if your customers decide to engage with you with any of your sorting algorithms, hypothetically, if you were to sort these sofas from low to high, you would see these as your top 3 most relevant, cheaply priced blue sofa results. My personal favorite is the felt shark hat. There was also another one that I didn't get a screenshot of, but anytime you would look for beds, we had a pair of wooden teeth that would come back. Honestly, I'm still not convinced that anybody buys wooden teeth off the internet. Like, what is that for? But sure enough, they were on there. Now, we thought to ourselves that we could do this, right? We thought, well, we made this assumption back in the day that we would OR the terms together. I mean, clearly, blue felt shark hat came back because blue is a hit. And you search from low to high, and it's very inexpensive because who needs a felt shark hat? So what we'll do is we'll just change the search algorithm, we'll AND the terms together, we'll do some minimum match magic, and we'll make sure that blue and sofa both matter, and that felt shark hats and blue socks just don't come back. So we implemented that logic, thinking ourselves very clever, and what we ended up seeing was our null search results spiked massively. Now, these numbers are not super meaningful for you guys, because I didn't include any of the column names, but really specifically, 26% of all searches during the 2 hours that this was allowed to be live on the site were null searches, right? Which is a massive growth and unhappy sort of a moment for my business. So we rolled that back, and we needed to solve the problem in a different way, right? So what was the different way? Well, we ended up taking our architecture, and then Fusion magically flew in from stage left, right? We take our business rules and we do our best to just stuff them into Fusion. We make a little space after removing governor from the universe. Actually, a really exciting moment for me was shutting that off. You make a little space between the search service, stick Fusion in there, connect it up to Solar, a couple of other various and sundry architectural changes just to sort of clean up some technical debt, and you end up with, at a high level anyway, a slightly more sane architecture with Fusion in the middle of it. Now, obviously, it's a little bit harder than little boxes and arrows, right? So to really kind of call out all of the things that happened during the 6 or 9 months of this transformation, Fusion didn't just fly in from the left, right? We had a multi-month partnership with Lucidworks, right, to stand everything up. And when I say partnership, what I'm talking about are groups of people who came down, like spent time with me in Minnesota, like spent a lot of time with me on phone calls and chat rooms, and helped us implement, install, and configure a Fusion server farm to wire that up to use our existing enterprise Zookeeper cluster and collection, and to help us upgrade what was at the time, I think Solar 4.1 master-slave setup, move that into Solar Cloud and have all the new sort of, new at the time, expanding Solar capabilities. This team of people didn't just help us install this software. They also sat down with dumps of Drools rules and helped us parse out all of the business rules, the many years of aggregated business rules, and convert them into structures and formats that were consumable in this new architecture. They gave us something that we call the rules editor, so that my business had a better than Excel UI to go in and create and configure business rules, help teach them how to use that and wire it all together. They helped us create query and indexing pipelines for each of my 16 brands so that we could have customized and customizable search experiences across all of the different brands, which all target different market segments and have different assortment types and different realities of search infrastructure that matter. Again, helped us move from this master slave to Solar Cloud, technology we had never really dealt with before. Helped us create new, slightly more sane Solar schemas so that we were taking advantage of performance opportunities, help us re-index data, cut over to new Solars, time everything, and generally just hold my hand to make me feel better about the world and answer inane questions of mine over and over and over again. I learned a ton in the whole experience, and they were fantastic to me. And at the end, what we ended up with was Fusion. I had a query pipeline, which this is a picture of, with some number of stages that did interesting and useful work. I had the rules editor. You can't see it because the writing is tiny, but I've got thousands of rules in the rules editor, probably around 5,000 at any given moment, but they change all the time. And it was deployed to production. People liked it. Was it better? Well, anecdotally, when I talk about whether this was better or not, I kind of talk about two things, right? The first one is blue sofas, right? If you search for blue sofas today or a year ago when I took the screenshot, you're going to get 84 results, a much more reasonable number of sofas. And if you sort from price low to high, the cheapest #1 thing is a sofa with a fetching blue cover. So fantastic anecdotally. As far as the business is concerned, was it as fantastic, right? Did we achieve any capability objectives that people care about? The answer there, I think, is also yes. We have, in e-commerce land, a really spiky load profile over the year. I mean, something like 65, 70% of our traffic comes in November, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like a giant fraction of everything we do happens in holiday. And we were hungry to see if an improved search algorithm could get us any major capability over holiday. So holiday 2016, we deployed Fusion, we turned a test on, and at a high level, this is what my test looked like. I won't walk you through all of the metrics. I'll tell you some of my favorites, though. The very first one is my two test campaigns compared next to each other. These numbers, specifically, you can see the visits across this test. We had slightly fewer on my test side than on my target side. 1% less traffic. But inside of 1% less traffic, every other meaningful indicator was green, right? Every other meaningful indicator went up for me. Now, some of them went up for me, 0.13%, but some of them, in particular, search conversion, right? One of my very favorites. Revenue per visit, one of my very favorites. Total conversion rate, that jumped 1.4%, right? And that was a meaningful test for me. And this is not every bell and whistle, right? I'm not talking about an installation where I had signals keying back in. I didn't have contextual search sensitivity. You know, I didn't have any of that machine learning that we've heard so much about. I'm really talking about fundamentally solving things we were doing wrong in our assortment with our algorithms, different ways to put in business rules, and essentially doing solar things right and doing it through this fusion architecture. Now, did it keep up? Well, I have some other numbers which are kind of nice. This is another test we did, October the 28th. We ran this for about a day, something like this. It was getting to November, right, which is my peak month. And we wanted to know, can we go live with Fusion? Is it baked enough? Well, the most meaningful line there is number 9, right? Total conversion for me between my control group and my test group, which was roughly 50-50, 2.8% to 4.3% conversion rate. Now, once again, I'm not trying to tell anybody, right, that we're guaranteeing 1% and 2% conversion rate jumps. Some fraction of this is a function of how suboptimal things were in my pre-condition, right? But having partners to help you understand what that suboptimal is like, how to fix it using sort of standard or industry accepted ways, understanding your business and helping you implement it, this really was a testament to what my business team's intentions would be if it was, air quotes, properly executed. Now, this was a year ago. In the meantime, right, have we done other things? Have we touched other things? Of course. It's been a year of learning and exploring and stretching. And just to sort of flesh out the presentation, I ran some reports for this month, right? What does this month look like now that I'm a year past go live, right? So here's a couple of relatively noisy charts. I won't try and, we'll try and skip to the point, right? This is the beginning of September 2017. Green bars represent, in this case, the number of searches that ultimately went on to order something, right? A meaningful metric for me and my business. It tells me, whoa, that was loud, tells me that they're finding what they're looking for. The green bar, again, is today. The pink bar is this month last year, right? So green is above pink, right? This is the growth in search term converting to an order for my company for September of this year. In the bottom right, I also, in the spirit of fairness, have just straight up growth in number of searches. And you can see again, if you're looking very close or sitting near the screen, that there's also just more traffic at the beginning of the year, right? So I'm not a data scientist the way that many people in this room or in this building are. I did my statistical analysis in Excel, right, because I know how. But here's just some rough numbers to show you what I'm talking about. Long story short, if you look way over on the right side, you can see that my traffic increased absolutely by 115, 120, 130% year over year. But my search conversion increased 130, 140, 160% during that same period of time, right? So I had growth in traffic, but I had statistically significant growth in how much of that traffic eventually ultimately ended up ordering something, right? Which is super meaningful to me and to my business, right? This is us kind of doing our work. So great experience, super useful. Business appreciates it for obvious reasons. But where my passion really starts is kind of here. Like here in the story, I think we're kind of talking about the things that you do with Solar and with Spark and with Zookeeper that are obvious, right? Every presentation about Fusion that I've ever seen anyway talks about how signal data can tune relevancy and how you can use business rules for configuration. The things that I'm excited about, the things that I'm going to talk about in a second, these are all of the other things that we've done in this architecture and with these tools that I find compelling. I'm excited to share them with you, and I'm really excited to hear from any of you other great ideas or things that you've done. I feel like a part of our community is sharing how to use our open source tools with each other. So, as an example, one of the things that I really appreciate philosophically about the architectural approach of these tools that we use is their sort of open, RESTful API interaction and integration, right? So if you talk about Fusion, you talk about Solar, every one of the objects inside of Fusion, these pipelines we create, these collections of rules that we're working through, every one of them is interactable with REST APIs. I have a giant suite of Postman REST API documents written by my friend Scott Shearer that I still use to this day. I have structures in place then where my business can go into my production website. They can set cookies appropriately. And when so cookied, they are using my production hardware and my production systems with the one caveat that they just jink over a little bit and use a slightly different set of Fusion rules. And what this means is that my business can log into Fusion and they can set up their business rules in the rules editor and they can configure their pipelines. They can preview it through the rules editor using the tools that Fusion has available, but they can deploy it into this side lane. Now, once so deployed, they can log into my production website, fingerhut.com, as if they were a customer, and they can search against a not yet customer-facing but production-deployed configuration of business logic. And when they're done, they say, yes, I want a customer to see this. Now, armed with these relatively industry-standard, easy-to-see RESTful APIs, my jobs take over, right? I know that I want to move this, so I call some gets against the REST URIs, and I pull down little JSON structures that describe all the work they did. I take those, I run them through some programmatic tests, right? I smoke test, production search, new search, right? Am I doing everything right? Am I getting results back? Is the quality decent? You know, I trust my business to eyeball everything, but, you know, trust but verify, double check. As soon as I'm done running my programmatic tests, I take these objects, again, because they're nice plain text objects, I check them into Git. I have a versioned backlog then of every one of these configurations my business has created that I could roll back to in an emergency. Once it's checked in, I just post it to the customer-facing Fusion instance, and it goes live immediately. Within seconds of them hitting the button, I have validated programmatically, I have checked it in for versioning, audit, and rollback, and I promoted it to production, and customers are seeing it immediately. Now, for my business, what this equates to is a system that they manage to use 10 to 20 times a day. Probably an average of 12 promotions of business logic happen in my production search engine every single day. Teams of people just touching it constantly. And because we have this ecosystem that is relatively open to me, I can wire in all the controls that make me feel good about letting other people touch my search engine. Another one that I just absolutely adore is something that I call operational relevancy. I think, once again, we undersell ourselves a little bit by getting distracted by what the tools, relevant tuning, machine learning, Fusion pipelines give us in the context of customer-facing search engines. Now, for me, as I mentioned, I own a product pipeline. And a product pipeline, one of the things this means is I have a team of folks, or Bluestem has a team of folks, who they take pictures of images, right? The top, the front, the back, they Photoshop it up and make it beautiful. I have a team of people who write copy, right? Descriptive text describing what products do, pulling the selling features that are meaningful to consumers and calling attention to them. There's a team of people who set it up in the finance system, make sure the inventory is working right, make sure that marketing material has been created so that we can send out advertisements, right? But many, many people are involved in tasks that largely can happen in parallel, but every one of these tasks needs to be accomplished before the product is really done and ready to go on the website. So in the before times, if you wanted to optimize your web copy team, right? Your copywriters who create this marketing material, you needed to decide, what is the product that you could be decorating right now that would be the best use of your time? What is the most impactful piece of work you can do on the left side of production, right? Pre-production. What's the best use of your time? How do you know what product you should decorate? Now, immediately, those of you who care about tuning sort of imagine, right? I'm looking to search through a list of products, and I'm looking to know which product is the most relevant to my goal, right? Find the thing that I should be working on. So I have a product pipeline. Well, I have a product collection. And in this product collection, it's the same as my customer-facing product collection with some notable attribute differences, right? I'm tracking my margin per product. I'm tracking whether its evaluation state, right? Does it have images yet? Does it have web copy yet? Does it have financial setup yet? What are the things about a product that are meaningful to me? Now, right off the bat, you can set up a relevancy algorithm such that you're the images team, and you say, show me all the products that are missing images, and the product with the largest margin could be the #1 product, right? The one that's going to make me the most money pops up. And then you think to yourself, all right, great, that makes a ton of sense, but that product, sure, it's going to make me the most money. It's not due to be on the web for a month. I don't have inventory, right? This other product is supposed to be live tomorrow, right? So now you're talking about how do I weight different signals against each other, right? Now in the Fusion tool, you have this capability in your aggregation jobs of understanding different metrics, weighting them against each other, and you basically get into the business of paying attention to the algorithm you would use to decide what is the most important thing to work on. In a similar vein, some of your product is almost done being set up, right? It's right on the finish line. Now that matters. When the images team then goes into work on a product, that's a click signal, right? When the copy team works on a product, that's a click signal, right? So you can feed back that teams are touching something and use that to boost the relevancy. Now all of a sudden, if all the teams start to touch the same product at the same time, all the other teams start to get that product in their work queue kind of boosted up, and you're more likely to kick the almost done stuff over the finish line instead of stall out waiting for a random step. I mean, you can imagine, too, this concept, right? The idea that you could tune relevancy tune, right, queues of work, it extends all over the place, right? Imagine your ticketing system du jour, right? Every ticketing system in the world, you've got people watching it, you've got comments, you've got maybe a severity ranking. Well, scrape that in, right? How much do you weight the severity? How much do you weight how active it is? How many people are commenting on this right now? You know, how many people have viewed it? How many watchers does it have, right? All of these concepts, you can have a ranking signal. And then when you're working your queue of tickets, you're not just talking about working on the most important or the oldest or, you know, just first in, first out. You can actually care about the most important, noisiest ticket, work that guy first, and you know that because you're crafting the algorithm and using Solar and your tools to give that to you in sort of the most relevant order possible. I think it's fantastic. It's not the only thing we do, though. Another thing that we do, again, that I'm super passionate about, is I have a team of people in my product setup pipeline who do taxonomy tuning. In particular, in this case, we're talking about facet management. Facets come down the left side of my screen, and they're a major driver of customer engagement on my website. Which facets to put up there for, how to make sure the data is right in the facets is always difficult for my business. And in particular, in general merchandising, I have an incredibly, stupidly long list of product attributes that are in my system generally, right? When I'm looking at an Xbox, I have attributes like, I don't know, disk capacity and drive speed and number of controllers, right? When I'm looking at furniture, I've got cloth type and number of people at seats. When I'm looking at shoes, I've got laces, color, and rubber type, and all manner of attributes. So 15, 20,000 data attributes that are very sparsely populated across all the different products. Common problem for anybody who deals with merchandise. Now, my business's challenge is for a given set of products, what facets can I make available, and in sort of what data quality do they have, right? So this particular tool you're looking at, facet management for me, it uses two core capabilities, again, that I've heard a lot about this week, Apache Spark and our Solar to Spark connector, right, to get this work done. What happens is I have my Solar installation. My Solar installation gives me all of the power of Lucene in identifying a subset of products. Now for me, that could be everything that's in electronics. It could be everything that's a part of the Valentine's Day sale. It could be everything that's blue, right? I don't really care, right? It's a search engine, you know how it works. Given that set of products then, what attributes are available to facet on? So this is the first regular Solar facet for me. Make my call to Solar. What data attributes do these have in common? You can sort of see it on the far right-hand side in the grayed out portion of the screen. If you've got a set of 10 products, 9 of them implement this attribute, 7 of them implement that attribute. You're getting an idea then for the density of implementation of a given attribute in this product set. Now, the part that is really exciting for me is where you bring Spark into the equation. Because knowing that everything in my set implemented the size attribute is not that interesting by itself, right? If you were to facet on size for an assortment of products that included Xboxes and shoes and boats, right? You might see extra large, medium, 5, 6 wide, AA, AAA, right? You know, size is sort of contextually, has contextual meaning depending on the category. So you can't just assume because they have a size attribute that it means the same thing. So now we have a preview capability. And preview's very Spark specific, right? With the preview capability, I have all the power of Lucene. I make my call to Solar, I get my list of products back, and I load it into a Spark data frame. I make my call out to a data structure. In this particular case, it's Postgres, a nice relational database, one that trivially stores tens of thousands of columns, or frankly, it's data modeled a little smarter than that, but tens of thousands of columns per product. I pull it into a data frame, I map reduce it up, and I express out to the website the facet as it would exist if we were to have gone through the trouble of faceting it in the first place. Now, if they look at this and they think the data looks clean, they hit a checkbox, it becomes faceted, and then we index it into Solar, and it's available as a regular facet to everybody else. But this is a piece of the toolkit where having Spark under the covers, able to call out to Solar, able to call out to other data structures that have data that Solar doesn't have, munge it together, and make something that drives business value very, very quickly. And last example before we run out of time, and I've seen some fantastic presentations about this. I'm sure you all have too. But that same Solar to SQL connector enables a lot of data modeling and data visibility capabilities that I absolutely adore. Can't say enough good stuff about. Can't wait to see the new versions come out. Really specifically, you can take your Solar collection via Fusion or without, and you can expose it to other pieces of technology as if it was an ODBC or JDBC data connection. Right? Now, it's not totally perfect. The experts in some other speeches have talked to you about that. But what that means for me today is that I can go into Tableau and I can point to a data connector, and it just points to Solar. Right? So my business asks me questions all the time related to what products are on the web. Right? And products for me come on and off the web all the time as inventory structures change and pricing structures change. It's a volatile place to be as we sell through this and buy new stock of that, right? So they want to know, you know, I'm seeing a sales drop in electronics. What's going on? Well, let's look right now in this instant. Let's look at the electronics, what's available on the site, what was pulled down recently, right? You have a new shipping reality coming in, right? Somebody's changing the cost of shipping product. Okay. How much is that going to cost me? Let's look at what's on the site right now who has a weight greater than 150 pounds, because that's expensive to ship, and box dimensions greater than 10 by 25. I can run that query immediately, real time, not a snapshot, not waiting, and I can visualize it in Zeppelin, which is cool, in MicroStrategy, in Tableau, and anything that has ODBC or JDBC visualization, right? It's just a data set once you get it out here. It could be a CSV. You can put it in Excel if you like the ultimate IDE. You visualize that, you give it to the people who need to make these decisions, and then you get to step back, right? You have a report builder now. If you want a piece of information about my product data, here is everything on the web, and then here's a pointer to, I don't know, an Oracle database with all your finances. Here's a SQL Server database with your sales, right? Here's just a straight up BI data lake, all built on Hadoop. Build your own joins, build your own queries, make your own dashboards. I will give you this capability to see what's on the web in real time, however you like. Big game changer for us, and hugely reliant on the great work that this community is doing with this Spark to SQL data connectors. Right? Solar's not a magic black box anymore. So for me, in this technology space, right, the future looks bright. It's a beautiful road. We've had a fantastic journey so far. And frankly, the list of things that I'm trying to accomplish or want to accomplish just grows, like moment to moment. I come to conferences like this. I hear speeches like how to increase your relevancy tuning, speedy data analytics, you know, incredible faceting by pivot fast. It's like all of this stuff that we're hearing about these days. And I'm just imagining more and more and more. I'm going to do A and B and C. I love the chance to talk with all of you about the stuff we've thought to do, and I'd love the opportunity to hear from you anything you've thought to do that maybe I could take advantage of. To that end, I'm free for a few more minutes before we run out of time. If you have any questions. Sir? Has Fusion replaced Governor? Fantastic question, yes. And no knocks to Governor. I'm sure it's a fantastic tool. I loved removing it from my architecture. Fusion replaced it completely, and it actually, most importantly to me, replaced me in the pipeline for Governor. No longer do I need to be involved to get rules from the business into production. Instead, they have a Jenkins job. You know, they can run it whenever they're ready for promotion, and all of my controls happen without me. So yes, we retired that. We had a cake. Sir? Okay, yeah, so the question was, in the e-commerce space, do people engage with the facet? And the answer is absolutely they do. One of the realities, at least of my implementation of facets, is that it's deeply dependent on having appropriately clean data in the space. If you come into my website as an example and you ask to view the electronics department, I know you're in electronics and I can give you really targeted electronics specific facets, right? That's a thing that I could do. If, however, you came in and just typed the word Xbox, I don't actually know necessarily what category you're in. And it's very difficult in the context of a pure keyword search to discover, at least for me, to discover which facets would be appropriate. So what we see is dependent on how you've engaged with my website, I can give you a very targeted facet experience, and people engage with it deeply, especially for shoes, right? People pick shoes, here's my size, very common faceting experience. Pants are the same way, shirts, the apparel line's very, very facet specific. Get your sizes filtered in. Now, I heard a talk, just yesterday from a very tall gentleman who was describing his solar customization to intercept in the middle of processing the list of products coming back, check which categories that those products were in, based on that discovery process, then decide which things to facet on. That would be a game changer for me, and I'm excited to see if we can steal that idea completely. Yes, sir. At the moment, we have what I would call 5 base facets, and everything past those base facets, sort of category-specific facets, we avoid. Sir? Did we integrate extreme data? Clickstream data, yes. So in the intervening months, we have integrated clickstream data. The number of signals that we pay attention to grows almost weekly. I'm particularly passionate about clicking on it, adding it to cart, even stronger to me than clicking on it, purchasing it, stronger still than adding it to cart. I also am a big believer in margin. I like the site first active, how new and fresh it is on the site. It's important to me how these things are shipped, whether I have to pay a shipping company, whether it comes out of my warehouse. The number of things that my business cares about in deciding relevancy is just growing. Once the capability to care about signals came out, it's sort of imagination is the limit. Absolutely, absolutely. And in fairness, you turn it on for the first time and there's kind of a boost factor, and you sort of tune that up until you see an impact. So it's hard not to. Yes, sir? So that wasn't clear, the business space rules editor, was that something you built, or is that just part of the Fusion that your business users are interacting with? Yeah, great question, and I'm going to tell you what I think the answer is. Lucidworks person would be best. My understanding is that it is a part of Fusion in the 4.0 release. Again, the release number is not mine to express, but that's what they've told me. We were beta users of the rules engine, so we've been with it for a number of months now, but my understanding is in future versions of Fusion, it is a core piece of the functionality. Again, thank you all for your time and attention. It's been great talking with you. Have a fantastic day.